Am I live? Oh god, here we go, we're live. Okay, I somehow I'm not good at this anymore. Not anymore at all. Woo! Well. Hi guys, welcome back to Fuck Me with David Rivas, with me, David Rivas. Welcome back to another fabulous episode of Fuck Me in the Library. Shh. Hi Val. Hi guys, what's up? Bam! I'm back again. I fell off that 1 week, but now we're back again. Today we're gonna start off with a shot because that's the move. Hey BB, that's the mood for today. Honestly, truly, literally moments before I started this episode, some asshole that I had hooked up with before sent messages about me to me on accident. I think he was talking to somebody else about me, and he was like, "Yeah, girl, go get that Henny." Ooh, ew, Henny. I'm drinking Ciroc, thanks. So Ciroc, if you want to sponsor me, please, by all means, sponsor me. But anywho, so this faggot, like, had the audacity to send me on accident, of course, send me messages about me talking about like, yeah, he's 24, he's Latino, he looks really bad with shaved hair, like, he's really femme all of a sudden, and I was like, bitch, what? You sent those to me, you dumbass? And I was like, well, glad you think that way, just know that we'll never talk again. And then he blocked me, and I was like, really? You gotta run your mouth like that, but when you accidentally, like, get caught, you don't wanna have a conversation about like why you feel the need to critique me like that to the general public like that. Diva, he was still asking me to dick him down literally earlier today. So I'm like, what? So do you want the cock or do you not want cock? Like, come on. Let's make it make sense. Make it make sense. Exactly, but when it's time to post up, yo, you want to do a lot of this, but when I come around, you don't want to post up. To quote that famous little girl from Vine. Yes, I mean, it's crazy. He just ended his 24-year long relationship with the divorce or whatever, got fired from his job too. I don't even remember his name, even though we hooked up a couple times. I think it's like Dan or something. I know he watches these. I know he listens too. So Dan, if you're listening, or whatever the fuck your name is, fuck you, dude. You really you don't treat people like that, and you don't talk about people like that, because guess what, Diva? We're gonna find out, and I will find out. So, here's to you, Dan. Woo! Alright, now that that's off my chest, let's start the episode. Hi guys, we're back with The Ethical Slut, Chapter 4. This one is called Slut Styles. Cheers, Val. I hope you enjoy your Henny, Henny. Slut Styles. So, yeah, right off the bat, I'm like, okay, word. This could be anything. I was like, okay, are we gonna talk about the aesthetic, which I am apparently very familiar with, like ever since high school. I remember quite distinctly when I was in high school, my theater director telling me I dressed like a slut, which, like, at the time, I dressed in V-necks and cardigans with jeans, so I don't know how the fuck she was. I think she was just more clocking me as the individual, not necessarily my aesthetic. But I've been told since I was in high school that I dressed like a slut, so I figured it might be an aesthetic. Or as Drew, my boyfriend, likes to so lovingly point out, that I have two aesthetics, naked and afraid. Yes, I know. Yeah, I got a dramatic fan. Yeah, Diva, y'all can't hear it on the audio, but it's... there it is. It's just a little wooden fan. I need a bigger one. I need a bigger thwart. It's hot. This is also my patio, my Florida room outside, and it's hot. There's no AC out here. It's not the move. And this fabric, even though it is breathable tulle, it is not, like... It doesn't aerate as well as it should. There's no breeze. But regardless, so I was like, okay, maybe an aesthetic, maybe it's mannerisms, like, oh, a slut conducts themselves like this, they walk like that, they talk like that, it's broken wrist, like, maybe it's something like that. Then, of course, like, basic, like, lifestyle practices, like a slut takes care of themselves, or a slut eats a lot of fiber, or makes sure that they're always, like, hydrated for, like, piss play or something, like, shit like that, like, yeah, sexual practices, but also dietary practices, like, truly lifestyle practices that ensure you're ready to go at any time, because if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready, to quote a very famous diva. And preferred method of pleasure, I thought those could be any sort of slut styles. And I just realized I talked about my aesthetic without showing, so hello. Yeah, see, so, like, for those of you listening, I'm dressed in, like, a see-through button-up that's, like, unbuttoned to its wit end. Tiny, tiny black shorts. And I got my titties out with a little bit of highlight on the titties, because I learned a thing or two from Peppermint. You can't really see it, but I promise it's there. There it is. Yeah, so I thought that any of those things could be the slut style that they're referring to. And they start off the chapter after saying, like, oh, yeah, this is the title. They started off by reminding everybody, they're like, oh, Dossie, Miss Diva, is the one that coined the ethical slut term in 1995. They're like, oh, yeah, and as Dossie coined in 1995 the ethical slut term, which I thought, yeah, fierce. Yeah, remind us that you thought of it. You're the one that came up with this concept and with this notion. You should be proud of it, and you should take ownership of it. And for those of you watching and those of you listening, I'm drinking a lovely, wonderful peach mango Bellini. In case you were wondering, hi Kendrick, hi Diva, and Ryan, if you're there, right? Hello. Okay, yeah, back to the book. And then they note immediately after that, after reminding us that Dossie coined the ethical slut term, they remind us that North American sex values and way of thinking and moving around sex are inherited from European like ideals because of colonization and the settlers. Like, they just a lot of those old puritanical beliefs kind of just, they were taken over here. And I think it's important that they note that we interact with sex and we think of sex in a very antiquated colonial mindset in the States in North America. So I think it's important that they pointed that out. Then they go on to list a couple like historical sex utopias. One of them in Oneida, Ohio, which I had no idea about. And I have a question. For people listening, do y'all like, as I go through these like very specific like examples and references in this book, do you want me to stop and break them down? Because I'm breaking them down just for myself, so I have like a greater understanding, but I don't necessarily feel so inclined to like exactly say what happened in Ohio or the other like international places that they mentioned, because the chapters are already so meaty themselves. Do you want me to like break that down? I don't know, like, I'm up for anything. I just don't know like what people prefer to listen to. Do you want to hear a full breakdown of the book, or do you want to hear my commentary more so? Like, I don't. To my 4 listeners, what do y'all think? Yeah, regardless. They also accredit artists and free thinkers with pioneering exploration of ethical sluthood or alternative quote-unquote lifestyles sexually, which I think they're completely right. Artists, a lot of the time artists develop work specifically from their interpersonal relationships, and of course they would be the ones that are more inclined to delve into those, of what it means to have a relationship like that, to have a relationship in general, or broaden or tighten in on the parameters of what a relationship can and should be. So I think that was very important to note. They also then thank the generation of love, essentially all the hippies from like the 70s and the 60s, who paved the way and allowed them to provided the platform for them to develop these ideas and this concept of an ethical slut, which I think is great. But at the same time, that generation of love, a lot of them are still alive today, and a lot of them are not what they were back then. So the need to thank them, I think, is a little like, yeah, thank the ones that like held on to it, but most of the divas didn't. Most of them, I don't know. I have a weird. I feel weird thanking old people for general shit that they may not have had any fucking part in. So I felt a little funky about that. But that's neither here nor there. We then transition to how modern sluts meet and interact, and they talk about like how there's conventions for people that are like polyamorous and shit, polygamy. They mentioned munches, which I had no idea what the fuck a munch was. They have it in the glossary. A munch is when polyamorous people meet up to eat at like a restaurant or somewhere where they eat. It's just a munch. It's just people going to dinner, but they decided to give it a term. Like, girl, let's go. I want to go to a munch. I want to see what that's like. I don't know if I'm polyamorous, but hey, I don't think they'll turn me away. The more the merrier, right? They then challenge you to Google your city or your town with polyamory and see what comes up. And I'm going to do that live here on the pod, divas. I am going to Google. Right now, I'm not to out myself, but I am in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware right now. Don't talk about it. Don't ask me about it. Don't ask me why I'm here. But I'm here at the moment, so I'm going to Google Rehoboth Beach polyamory and see what pops up. They are alleging that a community website or like a community Facebook group will pop up as this loads. It's already loaded, but I don't necessarily know that that'll happen. This is historically a gay beach town too. Not quite a P-town, not quite a Fire Island, but its nickname's Rahomo, and a lot of the rich DC gays retire down here. So it could be hit or it could be miss. Let's see. The first thing that come up is www.swingtowns.com. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, site to find a threesome. A website for swingers. Wait, I love this. And they're all polyamorous. A lot of them are polyamorous. Wow, okay. Work. Then there's one that says Newark, Delaware therapist who specializes in polyamory. Then just a definition of polyamory. Okay, so there was just one specific polyamorous recommendation in my area, which that is more than I thought there would be. I did not think there would be any. I did not think there would be like a single one. I thought it would just be the definition, let alone the Rehoboth Beach Swingers Meet polyamory website, which sick. I'm glad that that was the first thing to come up. That's nice. It somehow reaffirms me to know that these people, the people who do practice polyamory in the local area, are afforded at least some sort of digital space to do so. That's awesome. I'm happy they get to. Then they go into this like breakdown of how the old school girls would go, by girls I mean like gays and not straight people, how the old school and actual women, old school girls, the divas, the dolls, the LGBTQ plus and femmes would go to this place in North Beach called the Omni, which stood for the omnisexual. It was a nightclub like in the 70s that Dossie would frequent, and the way she talks about it in this little excerpt is so referential, and like you can tell this bitch had a really good time there. And I think a lot of those the clubs that she is describing, like this wild place where anything can happen. You can't assume anybody is any sort of gender just from aesthetics, because everybody is dressed to the 10s. No, fuck that. Everybody is dressed to the 11s. Everybody's dragged up, geeshed up, like everybody's in it and everybody's serving something. That it wasn't a question of, oh, I'm XYZ, I'm gay, I'm straight, I'm les, I'm trans, you were who you were in that moment on that dance floor, it sounds like. And something I've noticed personally is that I've said it before, I'll say it again, I fuck a lot of daddies. I surely do. I fuck a lot of daddies, and a lot of the time they're older than me, and a lot of the time they're of a certain age, so like 40 plus. And almost every single time, because I like to fucking talk. I fuck, and then afterwards I'm down to chill and get to know each other. A lot of the times they will mention how nightlife and the club scene, the club kid scene is not nearly, it's not comparable to what it was when they were coming up. And for Dossie to have this very referential and poignant part of this chapter kind of reaffirms that for me, that they are speaking of a nightlife that I'm probably not going to be super hip to, because the nightlife around here sucks, Diva. It sucks. The last call's at like 12:30. I hate going out around here. It sucks. This is also the only place in the world that I've ever been roofied, and it was fucking here at like the beginning of the night, so like 8:30 p.m. It was the worst. I hate Rehoboth, but that's just me going on a tangent. It sucks to see that my generation, and maybe the one a little before me too, was not afforded the opportunity to go to a club as iconic as the Omni or Studio 54 or down. Ooh, sorry listeners, that I just hit the mic. Gotta stop talking with my hands. Or like down here, there was this one called Cloud 9 that had like private cabanas that all the divas would go to, and there was another one called Renegade. Like, it's nightlife that they're talking about is dying, and that was a place for ethical sluts and queer people to meet, and those are slowly dying off, and it sucks, especially given the pandemic. So let me get off my soapbox, but before I do, let me just remind you, donate to your local gay bar. Go get to-go drinks from there. Go get some things. Do something, because I know for a fact those gay bars are hurting, the queer bars, wherever. They are safe havens for the LGBTQ plus community. I think as the community, we should do everything in our power to ensure that they live on, because then we'll have nowhere else to go. And then I'm not trying to get faggy in an Applebee's. So that's enough of that. Okay. So now they actually surprised me. They broke up the styles of sluthood into various communities. So they go through like the lesbian community, the gays, the bisexuals and pansexuals, the trans, BDSM, sex workers, and how they traverse sluthood within their communities and within the within society as a whole. So I thought that was really cool to set it down, like, this is how lesbians establish sluthood. It's super interesting to me, but I want to pause right here and mention that, again, these are people of a certain limited experience, and everything they say I'm not always going to agree with, just like everything I say you're probably not going to agree with. It may be miseducated, it may be like misinformed. I said miseducated, like that's a word. Maybe misinformed, it may be uneducated, it may be this, that, or the third. I'm gonna have patience with them as people of a certain age, and I implore you, my listeners, my watchers, to have patience with me as somebody of a learning age who's trying to get a grips on all this, because as they do, they seem very like sex positive and very affirming, but they still somehow shit the bed when it comes to some of these analyses and viewpoints. But let's go in and let's read it. Okay. So first, First and foremost, they read the dolls in the lesbian community. They read the. Where is it? Okay. My favorite quote was, it's kind of a long one, so bear with me. They talk about how the most common relationship sequence, as we see it magnified in the lesbian community, is the form of non-monogamy known as serial monogamy. Often the connection to the partner of the future precedes the breakup with the partner of the past, and the accompanying drama that presumably feels safer than the vast, empty, unknown, and terrifying identity void of being a woman living as a single human being. Ah! Like, why did they party? Hi, Ryan. Why did they go so hard at lesbians' necks? Oh my god, the girls, leave them alone. Like, I've seen the L word. I've seen, on my limited exposure, I have friends that are lesbians, and I've talked like this. My aunt's a lesbian. Like, I know I'm adjacent to that community and their experience, and I've noticed as well that with lesbians of a certain age, there definitely is like this non-monogamy, this what they say, serial monogamy, that kind of, it's just ooh maybe, but like I don't even know how to express it. Like they surmised it so perfectly. It is a small world, especially for these gay communities, so everybody's gonna fuck everybody at some point, and sometimes those fuckings and relationships overreact. The fan is not for show, Mike. It is hot. It's like 80 something degrees here. I'm on my porch outside. For the listeners on the pod, the divas are reading me in the comments. Everybody's commenting on this fan. Yeah, no, it is a little hot. Yeah. But also, hi, Mike. They then follow this reading of the lesbians with a quote that says, younger lesbians are questioning these traditions, and they are seeking polyamory more freely. And I thought that was nice that the younger generation is clearly seeing the mess and the drama of, like, the L word and other lesbian media, and seeing, like, oh, I'm not going to perpetuate this serial non-monogamy that ends up in gross drama-filled endings in relationships. I'm gonna pursue something that's a little bit more freeing and that allows me to have that non-monogamy. Excuse me, I got a hiccup. Ooh, in an affirming way, I guess. I liked that, and they talked about how lesbians, as a community, can teach women as a whole, or as I'd like to add, femme-identifying individuals as a whole, the power of being a sexual instigator, because in a lesbian relationship there is no man, and we are socialized to believe that men are needed to be sexual instigators, but lesbians don't have that. Lesbians, it's women seeking sexual freedom, sexual satisfaction, sexual connections, and romantic connections with other women, and therefore they will need to be these sexual instigators. And I don't think every woman feels as free to do so as they might. And I think that's really awesome to point out that, yes, agency and bodily autonomy can be achieved. You just have to take it, you have to grasp it, you have to wield it, because your sexuality is yours. Therefore, by all means, yield it as you see fit. And then they also talk about how lesbians are like, they're sluts not only because they can help everybody and they're like very forward about it, but because they're masters of foreplay. Because it's not just with lesbians, lesbian sex is not just about vaginal penetration, or there's not just a sole interest in that goal of penetration. There is this interest of pleasure as a whole, and therefore there's a lot of clitoral and anal stimulation, I'm sure, and the divas go off, the divas do it, and I love that. I love that they make mention of that. Like, the lesbians are really out here doing the most, and they are the most ethical sluts if you'll pay attention. I love that. And now we move on to their view of the gay community, and I'm just gonna start by saying I don't feature how they view ethical sluthood in the gay community. I do not. I think it's antiquated. I think it's very outside looking in, because there are a lot of dynamics in the gay community that they just fail to realize because it's not their experience. And I don't want to bash them for this, but I do not. I'm featuring about two things they talk about in this paragraph. So, already, they start off by saying the gay community reflects some of the traditional images of male sexuality in intensified form, which I think is completely right. Like, it's two men being sexual with each other, so there's a certain level of aggression and intensity with it that feels a little bit more primal, as opposed to how I would assume a heterosexual relationship would play out. I think it would definitely be it's definitely fiercer and more primal and more like, two men, dicks. Like, it's a lot more intense. And then, right after that, they talk about how gay male sex, as a rule, starts from a presumption of equal power, without the dynamic of overpowering and withholding that often pervades male and female interactions. Aren't wrong. I don't agree with that, because the dichotomy of being a bottom versus being a top instills that heterosexual dynamic into the gay community, and a lot of gays perpetuate that, and I do not believe that there is a presumption of equal power, because there's not. Tops believe they're in power, and bottoms believe, that's a generalization, so excuse me, but a lot of the times tops feel empowered and bottoms feel that they are the ones giving power, or they're the ones submitting and handing power over. And a lot of the times there's a lot of fucking sexual intimidation, where if you're physically bigger and you're gonna assume you're the top and I'm the bottom, you're just gonna physically intimidate me openly in a gay bar. And no, that is not okay. I do not stand for that, and it should not be done. You're gross, you're crusty, musty, and dusty. Like, no. Thinking that gay men go into a relationship, a sexual situation, under the assumption that there is equal power is, to me, completely wrong, because therein lies this idea that one of them is getting penetrated and therefore submitting, or one is under the control of the other's, like, pleasure giving or pleasure taking abilities. Like, I do not think that. I think it's just, this passage to me sounded like two femme individuals maybe not being as in tune to the nuanced dynamics of men as they could have been. That's not to say that this is not insightful. Like, I'm sure this was also a different time. This was like 2018, 2017, something like that. Like, the gays back then were acting completely different, I'm sure. But still, I don't agree. They even go on to say, men do not generally try to get consent from each other by manipulation, and bitch, they do all the time. That is, like, men's MO. Like, you know how many times people are, oh, I gave you a compliment, oh, I bought you a drink, oh, I did that, this, that, and the third, I winked at you. That is carte blanche for me to do whatever I want to you because I signaled. No, that is not consent. Just no, Diva, no. They proceed to dig their hole by then saying men in general have had less reason to fear sexual violation than their sisters. Wrong. Because in the gay community, sexual assault, I think it really is way far fucking more prevalent than anybody realizes it. And we don't really talk about it enough as a victim. I'm not saying a survivor, because yeah, I did survive it, but that I don't want to be labeled as I don't want to be labeled as a survivor. I'm a fucking victim because society has let these behaviors continue and transpire and continue to transpire. But as the victim of somebody who has been sexually harassed and assaulted by men, openly in front of other men that just kind of laughed and just didn't really do anything because they thought, oh, that's not sexual violation. They're both cute. One of them wants it. Like, no. 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 It's a big ol' no for me, dog. There's a lot of sexual violation and harassment in the gay community. And we are not talking about it enough. Moving on. They then go on to say gay men as a group are really good at finding out what feels good to them, which I completely agree, because gay men have they've kind of locked down the anonymous hookup with bathhouses, Grindr, anonymous sex, glory holes. Like, we've kind of the in and out process of like a Starbucks, McDonald's. We've married to casual sex somehow, and we're innovators and geniuses for that. That's all I gotta say. I agree with that, and I agree with them on that. And they also talk about how gay men have established most of our understanding of safer sex given the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And yeah, the reason condoms are free whenever you get tested or free at high schools or whatnot is truly because gay men have pioneered the notion of safer sex, free safe sex educational material and supplies. The gay community really has to be thanked for that. Their contributions to safe sex as a whole and as a concept, it cannot be expressed enough. And that's essentially all she wrote in this little passage for gay men. And there were two things I liked positively, really. I think these women should really look into sexual violation and sexual assault in the gay community, and maybe talk about how gay men could be ethical sluts, because a lot of the time I don't think gay men know how to be ethical sluts. A lot of them are gross. A lot of them are very intimidating. A lot of them like to intimidate straight people too, and that's not the tea. That's not cute either. Like, it's one thing for a straight man to volley a weird sexual quote, sexual joke or kitschy quote at a gay, and then a gay to volley back to kind of shut it down. But I know a lot of gays that are predatory in their personal workings with straight people. So gay men are trash. Essentially, all men are just trash. All right. Then they move on to bisexuals and pansexuals. Where are my notes in here? Oh, first off, I can't talk. My brain just shut down for a second. They first off differentiate between pansexual and bisexual, and they talk about how people might be labeled pansexual because they don't like the etymology of bisexual and its implication that there is a binary of genders. Like, there are just two genders. Pansexual allows for, as far as I understand it, is a way to allow for expression of all genders and the ability to be in a relationship or be sexual with all genders, which is lovely. I'm not saying bisexual people can't act like that or don't act like that, but I definitely think there's used to labeling so abruptly like that, so bluntly like that, I guess. They then go on to talk about how some bisexuals prefer different types of interaction with different genders, while others consider themselves gender blind. Some can be sexual with any gender, but romantic with only one, or vice versa, and so on and so forth. Which I think is, yes, it's about time somebody has said it. I have been with a lot of married to men, that consider themselves bisexual, or don't even consider themselves bisexual because their attraction to men is purely sexual. Like, the experience of feeling different things for different types of genders. I don't quite understand it because I'm pretty gay. Like I'm if they describe themselves as a man, pretty odds are I'm pretty much just gonna be down for it, or them. But like I don't necessarily get into femme identifying. I don't necessarily get into women or like yeah, I'm not attracted to women, so I don't understand the experience of liking multiple genders like that. So it's nice to see it reaffirmed in this way that there are no set parameters on what being a bisexual is. You can be bisexual in any means so long as you deem yourself bisexual. And I like that. I think there's a freedom to bisexuality that the other sexualities don't necessarily get. It's you can like yes, I love mass they thems too. I really do. That distracted me. You know I'm gonna take a sip now. I'm running my mouth with no sips. It's also a long ass episode. I also started wondering in this little portion of the chapter how bisexual and pansexual people feel, because I feel that about being grouped together often, because I feel that they often are whenever we have these conversations, and there is, I think, a distinct difference between the two, specifically that verbiage of like two genders with bisexual or pansexuals. It's any gender, it's any gender expression. I'm curious to see what the defining factor is and where the lines within both communities lie. Sorry, my cat is like over here causing a ruckus. Brooksy boy, get down there! Get down from there, Brooks! Fucking cats, dude. Yeah, so I'm really curious to see what the hell, like, is it harmful to group the two communities like that, because they are separate, and I think there's something to be said about their individual experiences separately and independently of each other, but I don't necessarily feel like that happens all the time. So I don't know. If you are bisexual or pansexual, please DM me. I would love to talk about this. And yes, if I ever want to, so basically when it comes to ATL, I'm gonna have to bring my mic, is what you're saying. Okay, got it. I think I just got my bisexual interview, y'all. The section following the bisexual section was the heterosexual section, and I don't know. A part of me wants to skip this section because heterosexual people have had plenty of time to talk about how they feel, and they do nothing but talk about how they feel. So part of me wants to say no, but alas, I'll do it. I'll go through and I'll read this section, or what I wrote on it. They talk about how Janet implores, by the way, not to assume that any couple that appears to be a man and a woman is in fact a heterosexual couple. One or both of them may be bisexual, trans, or queer in any numbers of ways. And then she says, as always, if you want to know, you gotta ask. And I'd like to refute that. It's none of your fucking business what anybody deems themselves as or defines themselves as, or anybody's gender. People's gender is none of your fucking business. You, just because you visually see somebody does not give you carte blanche to ask questions about what you see. Because baby, sometimes it's just, I'm giving you this, that's all you gotta know. Don't ask me shit about it because that is none of your goddamn business. I think trans people and genderqueer people are often put into these educational roles because fucking John Doe and Dick Buttmunch want to know about what the fuck you consider yourself to be, because they can't tell if you're a woman or not, or a man or not, or a them or not. Like, no, it's none of your fucking business, dude. Yes, I agree, you should not assume that any couple presenting as a heterosexual couple is indeed a heterosexual couple, because you don't know. But the fact of the matter is, you should not, unless they are your friends and you're trying to, like, you're trying not to offend, or you're in a situation where you're like, oh, gender's gonna get referred to, I want to make sure that I got you guys good, then I can understand asking. But even then, that's only if you're like Gucci like that, if you're friends and close like that. Otherwise, if you don't know them, don't fucking ask. It is none of your goddamn business what anybody's gender is. It's not. It really isn't. If you're interested and you're having a conversation with them and you're going back and forth like that, that's one thing. But if you're curious, but just because you're curious does not mean you should ask. So I think you should mind your fucking business. You know what I mean? You catch my drift? Yeah. Y'all do. Y'all do. Ooh, drop my fan. They also go to note that it's worth noting heterosexuals are perhaps subject to even more gender role based pressure than the rest of us. Which, true, yeah, they are. But also, boo fucking who? Like, okay, and like, and not, it's, this is where I feel personally I might veer into like oppression Olympics, and for that I'm sorry. But I find it hard to sympathize with heterosexual people. Like, ooh, I gotta be masked all the time. I'm like, well, I'm not masked all the time, and I'm doing just fine. You're in a heterosexual relationship. You can truly, yeah, and oftentimes you're a white man. You can truly do whatever the fuck you want, and I don't think anybody would say anything of it. I really don't. I really don't. Especially given this wave of, I don't want to say metrosexuality, but given this wave of soft boys on like the apps and like TikTok and Twitter and shit and Instagram, like I don't, mama, I don't care. Okay, yeah, you feel pressured to act manly all the time. Great, that sounds like something you have to deal with. I'm too busy trying to like walk down the street without getting stared at or harassed or called a faggot. Like, you go deal with that, dude, or sis. I'll be over here trying to make ends meet, but with survival. Like, I just, yes, straight people have to adhere to a certain, or feel pressured to adhere to a certain aesthetic, machismo, this, that, and the third, what have you. But honestly, as somebody queer, I like, girl, well, welcome. I mean, I don't give, it's hard to, I drop my pen. I find it hard to give two shits. Like, girl, that's what we all deal with. Get over it. That's just so growing pang at this point. I feel like, welcome to existence. You feel pressured? Oh well, deal with it, get over it. You either adhere to it or you don't, and you feel good about it. I am struggling to feel sympathy like that, and like I'm sure it feels much more overwhelming than I'm reducing it to. But honestly, coming out was so overwhelming that I'm like, dude, you're not coming out. You're just like, I like pink, or like, I want to paint my nails sometimes. Like, that's as, girl, get over it. Just, you want to do it and it's quote unquote femme, fucking do it, dude. I promise you. Like, if people are going to say something, you don't need to be listening to them. Anybody you need to be listening to is probably in your relationship. Like, moving on. Fuck the heterosexuals. This is another section where I don't necessarily feel the best. We get into our trans and genderqueer community, and immediately, what feels like, as always with theorists and scholars of a certain age, when they talk about the queer communities, when we get to trans and genderqueer people, I feel like without fail, people bring up people that are intersex, which I understand. I understand why. I mean, I understand, but it feels like they are using the intersex community and intersex individuals to just prove a point as a they're using them as statistics rather than fucking people, which is what they are. And I don't even necessarily know intersex is the correct verbiage or term for this community. Like it is something that happens, but I don't necessarily know that it's a term or a grouping or name that people want to attribute themselves to. Maybe there's something much more sensitive and much more like kosher and Gucci that I don't know about, but they immediately go and talk about it. They're like, people are trans and there's more than one gender because intersex people exist. Which, I mean, yes, you're right, but that's not what validates everybody else. Like, their experience doesn't validate everybody else's experience. Everybody's individual experience with gender validates being trans or genderqueer or what have you. It feels very akin to, like, you know how sometimes when people talk about, like, on Twitter, there's this thing where people will talk about the black community in particular and how black people can't have like a blonde hair or blue eyes or whatever, and some jackass will always like pull up a picture of like Aboriginal kids who are they're very black, they're very dark, but they might have like blue hair or not blue hair, blue eyes and like white blonde hair. But it's like they weren't even, that's a completely separate conversation. Like, yes, their experience is valid, and while that may affirm your point, this isn't the tea to make that point. Like, this is not how you should be making this point. You should just be affirming people's experiences because they're people's experiences, you know? I don't necessarily feel the best about how they chose to seemingly validate trans experiences through the scope of people being intersex. Like, I don't know about that. I just don't know. I just don't know. At the very end of this section, though, they write, trans people can teach us a lot about the determination to be free. Which, valid. Yes, they can. I mean, I feel very Pose as a show, beautifully married like ballroom culture to the trans experience, to the AIDS HIV epidemic of the 80s and 90s in New York, and I felt very affirmed and very motivated to explore freedom because of those stories, because those are real stories of women I know and have heard of and read of before, and men as well, and thems as well. But to say it like that, I don't think it is appropriate to place that sort of pressure on the trans community to teach everybody about the determination to be free. Fuck that, dude. Trans people and genderqueer people are too busy just trying to make it to tomorrow, make it through the next day, the next second, through the next what have you. They're too busy trying to survive and do their own goddamn thing than they are to teach you about what it means to be free. Mama, if you want to be free, go look at the wind, go dance in the wind, go dance in the grass, go dance in the ocean. You go be free, and you learn how to be free through something else. Trans people should not be your litmus test or your decider or educator on how to be free, because that is not their job, that is not their gig. Oftentimes that is emotional labor to talk about their experience and share their experience with you so you feel some sort of freedom. No. Mama, go look at a dog run through grass or something. Go learn about freedom some other fucking way, because this is not the way to learn freedom through trans people. Like, I think you can, and I think we have been afforded historical opportunities where we are able to, but do not turn to the trans people in your life and expect them to show you some secret aspect of life. No, diva, don't do it. Just go learn how to be free and unlock your freedom some other fucking way, because they are too busy to help you and your dumbass. They then move on to tantra and sexual spiritual sex practitioners, which just felt like a lot of empty info. I'm gonna have to go into sexual spiritual practitioners at some other point, because this one felt a little empty. But they talked about how Tantra practices are the weaving of physical and spiritual practices through sex. It is a westernization of the esoteric teachings of Buddhism and Hinduism. Sorry, I was trying to say Buddhism and Hinduism at the same time. Buddhism. That's what Tantra. And there's a lovely profile on Twitter. Daddy Will Tantra on Twitter. Go look him up. I don't necessarily know how, I just, what I know about Tantra, I know through watching him, and I don't have the capacity to explain it right now because I'm getting flushed because it's really hot. I'll have an episode where I talk about Tantra practices because it needs to be examined in depth. And that'll be a later thing. I guess you'll just have to tune in and keep subscribing to find it. They then talk about the kink and BDSM and leather community, which again, all they really said was that these really kind of developed hardcore after World War II, and they're kinky. Kind of just empty information, but what are you gonna do? This chapter seems to be very hit or miss. They then move on to sex workers. And sex workers, they write, maybe people who exchange genital sex for money, but professional dominance can be porn performers, erotic dancers, phone sex operators, webcam providers, sacred intimates, sexual surrogates, and many other erotic professions, such as there are erotic massages, I know, because I follow a couple on Twitter. Find my alt. Don't find my alt. Actually, don't. Well, I don't know, maybe. We may take a day and I may, open my alt and go through it. I don't know. But I love that they go into... they go into the notion that sex work is not just the physical act of sex. It can be anything relating to sex, from a sexual surrogate to somebody who just kind of jerks off on cam and you watch them. The sex work is real work, and it's legitimate. And they reaffirmed that, and I'm very happy that they did. As a former sex worker, no, I'm not former. Baby, we both know. The alts might get sent later, but not right now. I am a current sex worker as well. It's not my sole means of income, but I definitely do rely on it in some ways, shapes, and forms. And I definitely do have a client base down here that is very loyal, and they always come back and they always want more because these cookies are great, hot and ready out the oven, baby. Then they continue to read about sexual diversity. That one was just kind of cultural diversity really just leads to differing viewpoints and opinions, and they were pay attention to those. Well, yeah, Diva, if you're reading or watching or listening to this, to do that. And I think they just kind of beat a dead horse at that section. But whatever. They also ended the section with a beautiful quote from Ron and Lisa Young. They are two black writers that wrote Love, A Black Love Revolution. And it's all about being black and polyamorous. So I'm just going to read it to you right now. Many of us are not just looking for that extra someone for casual sex and occasional affection. We may see the freedom and openness of poly as a key to our survival. For many people of color, though, surface-level connection is easy, yet complex bonding and romantic love is a motherfucker. Here's why. Imagine trying to love someone when everything around you is set up to systematically pull you apart. For blacks, first there was slavery, then Jim Crow, then the welfare system, and now mass incarceration. We haven't had time to concentrate on love. We haven't had time to comfortably settle into each other. Sure, we have love, family, and community within our homes, but moving those feelings out into the world can be a very big process. We've been taught that in order to get by in this world, we need to be strong, but that doesn't work in terms of dealing with each other. Our culture has asked us to maintain strong boundaries that protect us from harm, but being broken down, taken advantage of, robbed of basic human necessities, and stripped of our dignity, this fear leads us to reject anything that places us in vulnerable positions, redirecting our attention away from the fact that only through vulnerability can we find the true strength to grow, become beautiful, and most of all, love. As Blacks, we are sent here as objects. Through polyamory, we receive the unique and joyous opportunity to define ourselves. We don't want your Mandingo warriors or Nubian princesses, or just to attend your play parties. We want to be respected as equals when it comes to building something real, polyamorous, and tangible. And I thought, I mean, that's what it's... that was beautiful. I know it's hard for each community to traverse in a sexual world, let alone minorities to traverse in sexual worlds, let alone sexual minorities to traverse in these worlds, but that's what it's all about, to speak freely and openly and vulnerably like that. But for these two white women to see their colleagues, hear their colleagues, and take their colleagues' words and give it a platform and pedestal to shine light on a very nuanced dynamic that not everybody will be akin to or sensitive of. And I think that was a beautiful way to end this chapter. After a very hit or miss chapter, they finished it quite strong by including Ron and Lisa Young's a little passage on polyamory, which, boom, added to the book. Love, A Black Love Revolution is added into... It's added to the library. It's on my queue now. Yeah, this episode was fucking hit or miss, dude. It was very all over the place, and I thought it was good. I really liked it. I kind of got very passionate about some of these things, especially about the gays. So... thank you guys for tuning in. We've had the most viewers we've ever had. 3 live throughout the whole thing. So thank you guys for watching and listening. I appreciate it. As always, I'm David Rivas. You can find me at Wine Daddy-O on all social medias. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok now. I be doing them TikToks. I be talking them ticks. And you can also follow us at FuckMePod, FCKMEPOD, on Twitter, Instagram, and that's about it. But also follow me on everywhere else at Wine Daddy-O. I also have that movie I did, The Garden, is coming out, the Garden film. Yeah, 3 people listening in here. Yeah! Well, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I appreciate it. As always, this is Fuck Me with David Rivas, a very special episode of Fuck Me in the Library. Shh. I'll see you next week when we go through Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 is entitled, what is it? I gotta find it really quick. Chapter 5 is entitled Battling Sex Negativity. Okay, so thank you guys. Well, I'll see you next week, and hopefully I'll have a fun new interview for you guys coming up soon. Adios, ciao, bye guys.